The CEO fired me over lunch to hire his nephew. I built the tech division from nothing, but no one knew what I had planned next. After inviting me to lunch, the CEO informed me that we were taking a new course. I had started the tech division from scratch, and now the owner's nephew was taking my place. I smiled and said, "These things happen." For months, no one recognized that I had already predicted it. Ethan is my name. Although you wouldn't know it from our company website or quarterly reports, I've been the backbone of Riverton Manufacturing's IT infrastructure for 9 years. I'm 40 years old. When we were still using Windows XP and using passwords on sticky notes, I completely rebuilt our network security, transformed a help desk with 5 employees into a 30-person organization that maintained 3 production sites open around the clock. I didn't stop in Milwaukee, and neither do the machines. That was not even how long I was supposed to be there. After my divorce, I took the work as a stopgap to keep me occupied while I considered my options. However, I did it well. Excellent. Those networks and servers eventually became mine, not legally, but in all significant respects. Maxwell's was the lunch location. Not the type of restaurant where you fire people, but the kind with white tablecloths where CEOs take clients they wish to impress. However, our CEO, Victor Hale, was constantly focused on appearances. He sliced into his steak and remarked, "Ethan, you've been invaluable, but we need fresh perspectives, someone with vision for where tech is heading." Translation: We've discovered a less expensive person who won't object to the board's foolish choices. Harrison's nephew recently received his master's degree from MIT, a bright youngster with a focus on digital change. I took a sip of water and nodded. "Who's handling the transition?" Preston appeared relieved that I wasn't creating a fuss. "You'll have 4 weeks. We'll announce it after the quarterly all hands." He brought me an NDA, which I signed before dessert, shook his hand and grinned. I explained to him that business decisions needed to be made. I discovered my admin credentials had already been reduced when I returned to my desk. The leadership team's email chain no longer includes my name. They had made their decision weeks before, possibly before lunch. I had trouble sleeping that night. Not out of rage, but there was no shortage. Not because I'm afraid of getting a new job. However, it was due to what I had observed in the server logs 2 months prior. I located a few minor attempts at illegal access from an IP address that led to the executive floor. Someone tinkering with systems they shouldn't be aware of. Examining my backup plans, security procedures, and paperwork. They weren't only taking my place. Everything I knew was being mined by them. First, after Ellie and I were married, I relocated to Milwaukee 16 years ago. She left a respectable security job in Minneapolis to attend this graduate program. We had ambition and were young. I assumed I would discover something. I was caught off guard by the divorce. After 7 years of establishing a life, papers on the kitchen counter appear out of nowhere. Her words, "We want different things." No altercations, no warning signs, just finished. I was sleeping on my brother's couch when I got a job at Riverton. Following a ransomware attack, they required someone to fix their deteriorating network infrastructure. I saw potential, even if I was just meant to be temporary. These men in industry were familiar with machinery, but not with computers. Their entire organization, which included hundreds of jobs and millions of pieces of equipment, was operating on antiquated technology and was just one crash away from catastrophe. I presented Preston with a 5-year strategy for change. He allowed me to work and provided me the budget. For 3 years, I hardly saw the light of day. Every network was rebuilt, personnel were taught, and backups and fail-safes were made. We were the only facility in the area to remain operational during the Northeast blackout. The board took note. Preston began taking me along to meetings. My spending tripled. I employed a group. Good people such as Ryan, who could solve any problem by using code, and Claire, who became my right hand. We were no longer just IT. Riverton was able to assure clients that they would never miss a deadline because of us. At the 2019 Business Christmas Party, I shook hands with Harrison Wells, the majority owner. You turned us into a modern operation, he replied. We couldn't have expanded without your systems. I believed I had discovered a place where I was important. Last September, the first crack showed up. An unexpected visit from an expert to examine our digital infrastructure. He inquired about systems that I had created myself. He changed the topic and brought up the executive team when I questioned who had given the audit permission. After that, I was unable to access the board meeting minutes on the shared disk. Server cleanup, the description said. Preston began calling off our weekly briefings in December, but he always gave a good reason. I heard Harrison discussing his nephew's graduation during the New Year Leadership Conference. His words, brilliant with computers. Silicon Valley companies are fighting over him. I didn't give it much thought. It ought to have. The last clue was when Claire informed me that she had been invited to a meeting that I should have chaired for strategic planning. Preston had shifted the conversation when she brought up my name. Something felt off, she stated, like they were planning around you. I dismissed it. My ex used to say loyal to a fault. I was in the server room at 7 p.m., 2 days after the lunch, long after most folks had left for their homes. I had always felt at ease with the soft hum of machines. I had chosen every part and created the redundancy for these server racks, the blinking lights, and the cooling systems. I had this space. I traced the main console's edge with my hand. I spent 11 years of my life behind these walls. I was working late when I turned to see Harrison's nephew, Aidan Clark, standing in the doorway. Stylish, high-end timepiece, easy self-assurance. His age could hardly have exceeded 30. I said, just routine checks. Do you need something? Getting the lay of the land. He entered as though he was already the owner. Preston mentioned you'd be showing me around soon. Did he? Nathan looked over the server setup. Impressive setup. A bit old school, but solid. Old school. 8 months ago, I upgraded these systems. He went on to say, your documentation is thorough. Been reading through your protocols. I have some ideas for modernization. Like he was doing me a favor, he stated it, looking forward to hearing them. The flavor of the words was chalky. When he was gone, I took a seat at my desk. The access logs were opened. 3 weeks prior to my lunch with Preston, Nathan's credentials had been created. He had been granted access as a top administrator. I've already looked through all of my documents. I took out my phone and sent Ryan a text. Can you meet tomorrow before work? Coffee at Joe's, 6:30. I took a car to the lakefront that evening, parked where I used to watch sunsets with Ellie. Under the winter sky, the lake was black. I reflected on the day I was promoted to director by Preston. He had remarked, you're the backbone of this place. We couldn't run without you. As it happens, backbones can also be replaced. When I got to the coffee shop the following morning, Ryan was already there. His eyes had dark shadows under them. He was aware of the problem. I said, they're phasing me out, without introducing myself. Slowly he nodded. I figured, they've been asking weird questions, having me explain your systems. It's been a couple of weeks now. His gaze lowered to his coffee. I'm sorry, man. I should have told you. I didn't hold him responsible. Ryan had children. Alone. He said, what's your plan? It wasn't until he inquired that I realized I had one. However, as I sat there and saw the early morning commuters hurrying by the window, something calmed me. I felt a clarity I hadn't experienced since discovering Ellie's divorce documents. They think everything's in the documentation, I muttered, but we both know it's not. Ryan bent over. The proprietary tools, the workarounds. I gave a nod. I created patches that aren't included in any manuals. The system for specialized monitoring. Nobody else completely comprehends the client interface. Ethan, I'm not going to sabotage anything, I replied, but I'm not going to give away what's mine either. After examining me for a while, Ryan nodded. He got it. I need copies of everything I developed personally, I said, and I need to know who's still loyal. The following week, at the all-hands meeting, the formal news was made. Standing at the stage, Preston discusses exciting changes and novel viewpoints. Beside him, Nathan smiled courteously when he should. Without glancing at me, Preston stated, "Ethan has been instrumental in building our IT infrastructure, and we're grateful for his contributions as he helps us transition to Nathan's leadership over the next 6 weeks." The room was filled with murmurs. The majority of the IT staff appeared surprised. From the other side of the room, Claire's eyes met mine and asked a silent query. I gave a slight nod to her. I asked Preston and HR to meet with me after the meeting, pointed out that I used my own development framework to build a number of the systems Nathan would be taking over beyond regular business hours. Diane from HR stated, "The employment contract is clear," as she passed a document across the table. "Anything developed during your tenure is company property." Not everything was my response. Before I started working at Riverton, the system sync interface was created. I kept ownership, but granted the firm a license. The original agreement has it. Preston stirred uneasily. "Ethan, it was 10 years ago. The business has changed. System sync has also done so. My original code served as the foundation for every update and integration." I bent over. "I'm not attempting to be challenging. I simply want my intellectual property to be properly compensated." Diane and Preston looked at each other. Preston responded, "We'll look into it at last. In the meantime, please focus on the transition with Nathan." They were stalling, and I recognized that expression. My access to the development servers was limited the following morning. According to the automated email, security protocol during transition periods, Nathan convened a team meeting without sending me an invitation. He was irritated when I arrived, nevertheless, but he immediately covered it up. "I'm delighted you could come, Ethan. I just described a few modifications to the network design. I rested my weight on the door frame. Interesting. Specifically, which architecture?" He said, "The main production floor systems, with assurance. We're going to streamline the protocols." "Those protocols prevent machine failures under peak load," I said calmly. "They're custom designed for our equipment." Nathan's grin grew strained. "Modern systems don't require such complex workarounds." Adding, "They're not workarounds," Claire said. "These modifications are required for our particular hardware. Ethan created these, following the failure in 2018. The room went quiet, and Nathan's self-assurance faltered for a second. Next. "Well, I appreciate the historical perspective, but we're moving forward with the streamlining." He dismissed me by turning to the whiteboard. I got an email from legal later that day. Citing a provision regarding integrated technology being company property, the firm was claiming complete ownership of all systems, including System Sync. They gave me a $7,500 technology acquisition incentive. The following day was the actual betrayal. I found out that Nathan had set up individual meetings with every member of my team, complete job appraisals, not transition talks. He was deciding whom to retain. Later, Ryan texted me. He inquired as to whether your methods were overly complicated or truly necessary. I'm looking for criticism. In my personal account that evening, I discovered an email from one of our vendors. The new licensing agreement Riverton sent over, which I was unaware of, left them perplexed. I opened the file. Preston had agreed to transfer all of my bespoke supplier connectors to Nathan's former classmate's firm, a third-party vendor. They weren't only shoving me away. Everything I had constructed was being dismantled and sold. My credentials were completely revoked when I attempted to access the backup servers in order to recover my original code. Go for it. Leverage was something I urgently needed. Riverton had not simply been irresponsible. They had been making calculations. The chronology was starting to make sense. Months before, Nathan had been sent in to study my systems and get what I knew in order to replace me. I contacted Daniel Grant, a network security expert I had collaborated with in the past. That evening, executives like Preston would never enter the diner where we met, which was off the highway. Darren responded, "Legally, you're in a tough spot," following my explanation of the circumstances. "Nevertheless, there is a discrepancy. Why force you to leave now? The business is going nicely." I confessed, "That's what I can't figure out." "Let me dig around," he said. "Just collecting data. Nothing invasive." Darren called me at 11 p.m. 2 days later. "You need to see this." SEC documents he had discovered indicated Riverton was getting ready for an acquisition. They were in late-stage negotiations to be acquired by Boston-based manufacturing powerhouse TechCore Industries. The agreement required Riverton to exhibit transitional leadership and updated technical infrastructure. "They're cleaning the house to make the sale look better," Darren clarified. "Additionally, one of your main selling points is your systems. The proprietary production management interface is expressly mentioned in the value. My user interface. System synchronization." "There's more," said Darren. "The majority of Harrison Wells' shares were cashed out last quarter. Preston and the executive team would be the primary beneficiaries of the deal. They received TechCore executive jobs and golden parachutes. The acquisition wasn't the thing that broke me. Finding emails that revealed Preston and Harrison had talked about replacing me more than 6 months prior. They were interviewing Nathan as I was working through the night to solve a significant security issue. I took a car to the former industrial park, where I had originally drawn the system sync design, while it was still a concept. I watched the sky turn gray above abandoned warehouses while I sat in my car until daybreak. An old external hard drive was in my closet when I arrived home. After plugging it in, I was able to locate the system sync code that existed prior to Riverton. I had begun development 8 months before joining the organization, according to the documents. Preston specifically asked me to connect System Sync with Riverton systems in the emails that I also discovered. He admitted that it was a tool that I owned. He assured me that after everything calmed down, we would formally take control. I had put my trust in him. I'm a fool. Nathan summoned me to a meeting with Preston and Diane from HR the following day. Preston stated, "We're accelerating the transition without providing an introduction. Your last day will be next Friday." When I said 2 weeks instead of 6, "Is there a specific reason?" Diane added, "Nathan has demonstrated exceptional capability with ease. And frankly, Ethan, your attitude hasn't been conducive to a smooth handover." Slowly I nodded. "I see. We'll need you to complete all documentation and training by Wednesday." Nathan continued. "Of course," I said in a firm voice. "And System Sync's ownership. Have you gotten a chance to look at the initial contracts?" Preston's face became stern. "All integrated systems are owned by the corporation, according to our legal team. Ethan, you have a generous separation package. I advise you to accept it." I got to my feet. "I'll have my lawyer review everything." When Preston said, "Don't make this difficult. It won't change the outcome." I texted Ryan as I was leaving. Plan B. Tonight. Ryan gave me a flash drive in a grocery store parking lot 7 hours later. Silently, "Everything you asked for," he said. "Original code bases, deployment logs, authentication keys. Why are you helping me?" I questioned after thanking him. He gave me a direct glance. "Because they think we're all replaceable." The original system sync code, the communications with Preston, the licensing agreements, and the dates demonstrating that I had created the basic technology before Riverton were all painstakingly documented over the course of the weekend. I got here early on Monday. Claire was already at her desk and appeared exhausted. "Have you heard about the timeline's acceleration?" she inquired. I gave a nod. "How is it going for the team?" "Not very good. Over the weekend, Nathan convened emergency planning sessions, attempted to hack your monitoring system from the inside out." She spoke more softly. "It didn't work out. 3 production floor notifications were overlooked. Is anyone injured?" "No, but line 3 had to be shut down for 5 hours. Lost output and cost roughly $60,000. I maintained a neutral expression. "Sorry to hear that." "Ethan," she paused, saying, I believe I'll be the next. Nathan has been inquiring about the necessity of my role. I had a suspicion. Claire was too familiar with the actual workings of the system. Do you think I'm trustworthy? Quietly, I inquired. She made no hesitation. Completely. A sealed envelope was slid across her desk by me. Open this if something unexpected occurs this week. It clarifies everything. I had meetings with 3 different patent lawyers that afternoon, paid expedited filing fees for provisional patents on important system sync features. Not the entire system, only the essential parts that enabled it to function with manufacturing machinery. I finished all of the transition paperwork Nathan asked for on Tuesday, went to his planning session. Courteously responded to inquiries. The ideal worker, Darren, was assisting me with the off-site setup of a secure server in the interim. I had moved all of my original code there by midnight, developed a version of System Sync that could function without relying on Riverton's infrastructure. I discovered an email from TechCore Industries on my personal account on Wednesday morning, an invitation to visit their regional office to talk about shared business interests. They were curious about my experience and had heard that I was leaving Riverton. A bet was being hedged by someone. I called the VP of Operations at TechCore after forwarding the email to my attorney, suggested that we get together when I formally leave Riverton. He instantly agreed. I carried out the main portion of my strategy that evening. I upgraded 3 crucial system sync components using the access credentials Ryan had saved. In order to determine whether the code had been altered by unauthorized individuals, I included digital signature verification. I changed the license so that it would expire precisely 5 days after my official departure. I made a clear roadmap for the legal transfer. If a valid license agreement was signed, the system would keep working. Nothing harmful, nothing malevolent, just defending what was mine. Nathan dragged me into his office on Thursday. Some of the team members say, "You've been acting strangely," he stated. "Is there anything I should be aware of?" To which I replied, "Just focused on wrapping everything up." He looked at me suspiciously. "After your departure tomorrow, we're updating all access credentials and system passwords. Standard operating procedure." Saying makes sense, though it won't affect the core functionality of System Sync. Meaning, simply said, the system is made to function even if the administrator makes changes. The beauty of it is that I could see him attempting to determine whether I was being instructive or frightening. He made a poor decision. His words, "I think we're good here," brushed me aside. "Legal will meet with you tomorrow for final paperwork." Preston went by me in the corridor as I was leaving, hardly gave a nod. That is a reduction of 11 years. Everything was set up by midnight. Verification sequence Alpha 7 complete was the last email I sent to my private server. The countdown has started. I handed in my badge on Friday morning, signed the paperwork for leaving, refused Nathan's planned celebratory lunch, much to Preston's obvious relief. Ryan called as I was making my way to my car. "It's done," he declared. "All of the admin passwords were just updated by Nathan. This afternoon, they're conducting a thorough system evaluation." I said, "Thanks for letting me know," in a neutral tone. "Now what?" he inquired. "Now we wait." I stayed at home for the weekend. Disregarded calls from unidentified numbers. I enjoyed the best sleep I'd had in months. At precisely 8:45 am on Monday, when the factory floor transitioned to peak activity, all 3 of Riverton's facilities' System Sync instances showed the identical message. "Please get in touch with the developer to renew your license, as it has expired." The first production line stopped at 9:20. All 3 facilities were unavailable at 9:10. Preston gave me a personal call at 10:30. "How on earth did you accomplish that?" I could hear the panic, even though he was trying to seem authoritative. Calmly, "I didn't do anything," I answered. "The license for the software expires. I'm pleased to talk about renewal terms as System Sync's developer and owner." Hissing, "This is sabotage." I told him it's standard license management. Instead, examine the original 11-year-old integration agreement. In particular, Clause 7 indicates that Riverton was licensing the technology rather than buying it. The line was silent. I've sent a proper licensing agreement to your legal department, I said. The terms are simple: recognition of my ownership, proper compensation for continued use, and a non-disclosure agreement about the circumstances of my departure. That's extortion. The answer was, that's business. These things happen. Their lawyers had looked over my paperwork by 1:30 p.m. The deal was signed by 3 p.m. 3 days later, I sat at the downtown office of TechCore, across from the vice president of operations. A contract was slid across the table by him, adding, "We're still acquiring Riverton, but we want you to lead the technical integration as a consultant, not an employee." The pay was double what I had received from Riverton. Complete authority over my working location and hours. "How about Nathan?" I inquired. The vice president's face became a little sour. "Mr. Blake is going to move on to other chances." That afternoon, I signed the agreement. Ryan called me 2 weeks later to inform me that Nathan had been discreetly fired. He had pursued other options, according to the official narrative. The real explanation was that, following several system failures, 3 significant clients had threatened to terminate their contracts. Preston's position at TechCore was mainly ceremonial, but he continued to serve as CEO through the transaction. No true team, no true power. Just an office away from decision makers and a nice title. I didn't feel validated as I had hoped, just a silent assurance that I have taken the required action. The next month, I made a down payment on a modest cabin on the lake using my first consulting check. It's a simple, peaceful spot with a deck that looks out over the ocean, somewhere where I could see the sun rise and set. 2 months later, Claire joined my consulting team. Then Ryan. In the end, I had half of my former department working with me, not for me. Partners in an expanding company. About a year after all of this, I ran into Preston in a downtown restaurant. He turned away and then paused. Approached my table. "You won," was all he said. I gave him a serious look, the tension in his eyes. The clothing was a little rumpled. He had grown older. I answered, it wasn't about winning, with sincerity. Value was at issue, being aware of your value. After giving one nod, he turned to leave. I sat there for a while, watching the lights across the river come on in the city. Considering systems, the ones we construct, the ones we shatter, and those who, in the end, outlive us all. And that's the thing about betrayal. It hurts, but it also teaches. In the end, the best revenge isn't payback. It's peaceful. It's growth. It's choosing to rise when others expect you to break. If you're hurting right now, I see you. Set your boundaries. Heal in your own time. And when you're ready, let go, not for them, but for you. I found my power in silence and success, and so can you. Have you ever faced a betrayal that changed you? Share your story below. Let's heal together, one truth at a time.